What if I told you that right now, over 23% of websites are vulnerable to an attack that could expose their entire database? And what if I told you this attack could reveal usernames, passwords, credit card numbers, and even personal information with just a few keystrokes? But here's the most alarming part. It can all be done by simply manipulating text in a search box or URL. I'll show you exactly how attackers can exploit poorly secured websites to access databases containing sensitive information from platforms like Facebook, Instagram, banking websites like Chase and Bank of America, and even government databases. More importantly, you'll learn how to identify these vulnerabilities and protect your own websites from becoming victims. Before we begin, I need to make something absolutely clear. Everything demonstrated in this video is strictly for educational purposes only. The knowledge you're about to gain comes with significant responsibility. Understanding SQL injection techniques is crucial for recognizing and defending against these attacks, but using these methods to target actual websites is not only unethical, but illegal in most jurisdictions worldwide. All our demonstrations today will be performed in a controlled laboratory environment using deliberately vulnerable applications designed for security training. We will not be targeting any real websites or services. Today's video will focus on the practical demonstration of SQL injection. For a more in-depth understanding of the theoretical concepts behind SQL injection, including its types and subtypes, check out our theoretical video by clicking the info card appearing at the top right of your screen right now. I strongly recommend watching that video first, for better understanding before attempting any of these techniques. Let me briefly explain what SQL injection is. SQL stands for Structured Query Language, which is used by databases to manage and retrieve data. When a website needs information from its database, it sends SQL queries to request that data. SQL injection happens when an attacker inserts or injects malicious SQL code into the queries that an application sends to its database. If the application doesn't properly validate or sanitize user input, attackers can manipulate these queries to access data they shouldn't be able to see, modify database information, or even delete entire databases. SQL injection comes in several types. Today we'll focus on in-band SQL injection, specifically error-based and union-based techniques. There are also blind SQL injection methods, time-based techniques, and out-of-band approaches, which we'll cover in future videos. These attacks can target any website with a database backend, which includes most modern websites like online shops, social media platforms, banking portals, and government services. Now let's set up our testing environment to see SQL injection in action. For this demonstration, we need a deliberately vulnerable web application. We'll use DVWA, the DAM Vulnerable Web Application. This is a PHP and MySQL web application, specifically designed for security professionals to practice their skills legally and ethically. First, let's update our Kali Linux system. Open your terminal and run sudo apt update. This command synchronizes your package index files with their sources, ensuring you have the latest information about available packages and their versions. Now, let's upgrade the system with sudo apt upgrade. When prompted, type Y to continue. This will install the newest versions of all packages currently installed on your system. Keeping your system updated is essential for security. Now that our system is updated, we need to install DVWA. There are several ways to do this, but we'll use Docker for simplicity. Docker allows us to run applications in isolated containers, making it perfect for security testing. To install Docker, run sudo apt install docker.io and press Y when prompted. Docker is a platform that allows us to develop, ship, and run applications inside containers. Think of containers as lightweight, standalone packages that include everything needed to run an application. This isolation ensures that our vulnerable application doesn't affect our main system. While Docker is installing, let me explain why we're using DVWA. DVWA is specifically designed to be vulnerable to various attacks, providing a safe, legal environment to practice ethical hacking techniques. It includes multiple security levels, allowing you to increase the difficulty as your skills improve. Once Docker installation is complete, we need to start the Docker service. Run sudo systemctl start docker. This command starts the Docker daemon, which manages all containers on our system. Next, enable Docker to start automatically whenever your system boots with sudo systemctl enable docker. Now we need to download the dvwa docker image. Run sudo docker pull vulnerables /web-dvwa. This command downloads the dvwa image from Docker Hub. Docker images are the blueprints for containers. The download might take a few minutes depending on your internet speed. After the download completes, we need to run the dvwa container. Type sudo docker run rm it p8080 vulnerables web dvwa. This command creates and starts a container based on the dvwa image we just downloaded. The p80:80 part maps port 80 of the container to port 80 on our host machine, making the web application accessible via localhost. Now that dvwa is running, open your web browser and navigate to localhost. You should see the dvwa login page. The default credentials are username admin and password. Enter these and click the login button. You'll be directed to the database setup page. Scroll down and click the Create or Reset Database button. This initializes the database for our testing. After the database is created, you'll be redirected back to the login page. Log in again using the same credentials. Now you'll see the dvwa main page. Before we begin testing, we need to ensure the security level is set to low for our demonstration. Click on dvwa security in the left menu. You should see that the security level is already set to low, but if not, select low from the drop-down menu and click Submit. Now we're ready to perform some SQL injection attacks. Click on SQL injection in the left menu. You'll notice there are two options: SQL injection and SQL injection blind. We'll focus on the first one today, which allows for in-band SQL injection. You'll see a simple form asking for a user ID. This is where we'll perform our SQL injection attacks. Let me explain that SQL injection can be performed through various entry points, like text fields, URL parameters, cookies, and even HTTP headers. Anywhere user input might be incorporated into SQL queries. Let's start with some basic tests. Type 1 in the user ID field and click Submit. You should see information about the user with ID 1, which is the admin account. If we enter 2 and submit, we get information about the second user, Gordon Brown. These are legitimate queries, but what happens if we try to manipulate the query? Let's try entering 1' or 1 = 1 and click Submit. Wow, look at that. We got information for all users in the database. Let me explain what happened. The original query likely looks something like, select first name, last name from users, where user ID = 1. When we entered 1 or 1 = 1, the query became, select first name, last name from users, where user ID = 1 or 1 = 1. The or 1 = 1 part always evaluates to true, so the query returns all records. The 3 dashes at the end is a comment in SQL, which tells the database to ignore the rest of the query, preventing syntax errors. Now let's try to determine how many columns are in this table. We'll use the order by command for this. Enter 1' order by 1 and submit. This works fine. Now try 1' order by 2. This also works. Let's try 1' order by 3. We got an error. This tells us that the table has exactly 2 columns. Now that we know the number of columns, we can use union select to combine our query with another query. Enter 1' union select, 1, 2 and submit. You can see that the result shows both the original query result, the admin user, and the numbers 1 and 2 below it. The number 2 appears in the output, which tells us that the second column is being displayed. Let's try to get some useful information. Enter 1' union select 1, database and submit. Look at that. Instead of the number 2, we now see dvwa, which is the name of the database we're accessing. Now for the most critical part, Let's try to extract usernames and passwords. Enter 1 select user, password from users, and submit. Incredible! We can now see all the usernames and password hashes from the database. This is extremely dangerous in a real-world scenario, as these credentials could be used to access the admin panel or user accounts. Let's see if we can crack one of these password hashes. Copy one of the password hashes, open a new tab in your browser, and search for CrackStation. Open the first result. Paste the hash into the input field and click Crack Hashes. In just seconds, you can see that the password for the admin account is simply password. Many of these online hash cracking services maintain extensive databases of pre-computed hashes, making it trivial to recover passwords that aren't properly secured. This demonstrates the severe impact of SQL injection vulnerabilities. In just a few minutes, with no specialized tools, we've extracted all user credentials from a database. On a real website, attackers could potentially access financial information, personal details, or even gain complete control of the website. Now that we understand how devastating SQL injection can be, let's talk about how to protect against these attacks. If you're a website owner or developer, here are the key defenses. Use parameterized queries or prepared statements, instead of directly inserting user input into SQL queries. This is the single most effective defense against SQL injection. With parameterized queries, user input is treated as data, not as part of the query. Implement input validation to reject suspicious input patterns. While not foolproof on its own, it adds an additional layer of protection. Use an ORM object relational mapping framework, which typically includes built-in protection against SQL injection. Apply the principle of least privilege to your database accounts. Web applications rarely need full administrative access to a database. Keep your web application frameworks and libraries updated to ensure you have the latest security patches. Consider using a web application firewall WAF that can detect and block common SQL injection attempts. For users concerned about their accounts on various websites, use strong, unique passwords for each service. Enable two-factor authentication whenever possible. Regularly monitor your accounts for suspicious activity. Be cautious about sharing personal information, even on seemingly secure websites. Consider using a password manager to generate and store strong passwords. Today, we've seen just how powerful and dangerous SQL injection can be in the wrong hands. From extracting sensitive user data to potentially gaining full control of a website, the risks are substantial. What makes SQL injection particularly concerning is its simplicity. It doesn't require specialized tools or extensive technical knowledge, just an understanding of how SQL queries work and where to look for vulnerabilities. For website developers and administrators, this underscores the critical importance of secure coding practices and regular security testing. Remember, the knowledge shared in this video is meant to help you understand these threats and protect against them, never to cause harm. Always operate within legal and ethical boundaries. If you found this demonstration valuable for your security journey, hit that like button. Subscribe and enable notifications to stay updated with our latest security insights. Share this video with developers and security enthusiasts who could benefit from understanding these vulnerabilities better. Drop a comment sharing your thoughts on SQL injection, or suggesting what security topic you'd like me to cover next. Remember, knowledge is power, but with power comes responsibility. Until next time, stay curious, stay ethical.
Make it run， 抱紧的抱抱里，好长的奶子，我紧着爱，锁紧了我的。